In September of 2020, Corsair Gaming went public at a $1 billion valuation. For most company owners, this is usually the dream, to take your company public and solidify everything you and your team have accomplished. And things started off pretty well for Corsair. The stock over doubled within the first few months as investing hype approached a peak. But ever since then, it's only been downhill for the company. In fact, the stock is currently down at 76%, and Corsair is simply bleeding market cap day after day. Things don't look much better behind the scenes either. Annual revenue has taken a decent haircut since 2021, from $2 billion to $1.5 billion. And the story is even worse if we take a look at net income. Corsair has gone from making $100 to $150 million per year to losing $40 to $60 million per year to now just barely breaking even. As such, their bankruptcy probability has shot up to a little less than 35%, but likely the biggest red flag for the company is waning consumer sentiment. Back in the 2010s, Corsair was seen as one of the premium gaming hardware makers. They had eye-catching products like the Glass 570X computer case, the fan-favorite K70 keyboard, and of course, RGB everything. They used to be the sort of Apple of certain categories, but since then, Corsair's consumer sentiment has turned for the worse. One simple Google search will bring up dozens of threads about Corsair horror stories and why people will never buy from Corsair again. What makes this picture crystal clear though is their Trustpilot reviews. The company only has a 2-star rating over 1,000 reviews, and that's because 60% of the reviews are 1 star. Warranty means crap. Awful company to deal with directly. Screw Corsair. I hate leaving bad reviews, but you still love Corsair. As you can see, many of these reviews are actually from former fans or people who really wanted to give Corsair some slack, but Corsair kept disappointing them over and over again. So, what in the world happened to Corsair? If you're interested in deeper dives, interviews with insiders, and exclusive tech analysis, consider subscribing to our free weekly newsletter. But anyway, starting off with the fundamental decline of Corsair, it seems that there are 3 main factors at play, starting with diminishing brand value. One of the main appeals of Corsair historically has been their premium brand image. They were kind of the Apple of the gaming hardware space. Their products weren't necessarily better or more reliable than any other leading brand, but their products did arguably look cooler and sleeker, and Corsair had excellent marketing. If you were watching any computer build video on YouTube back in the late 2010s, you could bet that they were using a sponsored Corsair H100, a Corsair power supply, and Corsair Vengeance RAM. Corsair also pioneered the infamous RGB trend, which many people despise, but if that's what you were into, Corsair was by far the best option on the market. Over time though, Corsair has slowly lost this status, largely because other brands caught onto Corsair's tactics. For example, Kingston, G-Skill, and Thermaltake brought out RGB RAM, Razer put up serious competition within the peripheral space, and everyone started making eye-catching computer cases like Thermaltake, Lian Li, and Cougar. Likely the biggest blow, however, was from Asus. If you're not aware, Asus, and more specifically ROG, have a sort of legendary status within the gaming community. ROG is seen as the elite gaming brand with the best hardware known to mankind. Corsair's brand strength was never even comparable to the ROG brand, but Corsair was able to do well in their own right because Asus simply wasn't that involved in many of the sectors in which Corsair excelled. But over the past couple of years, Asus has entered almost all of these sectors. This includes peripherals, computer cases, liquid cooling systems, and power supplies. The only Corsair dominant industry that Asus has yet to enter is RAM, but Corsair already has plenty of competition there anyway. So much of the exclusive premium appeal of Corsair has worn off simply due to more competition and bigger players entering the scene. Corsair has tried to fight against this trend by expanding into other sectors themselves, but this hasn't played out all that well, bringing us into factor number 2, disappointing expansion efforts. Corsair has tried to apply their winning strategy of eye-catching, somewhat gimmicky products into other sectors, and it simply hasn't worked all that well. Likely the best example of this is the Corsair Xenon Flex monitor. The main selling point of this monitor is that you can bend the display to get the perfect curvature, but coming in at $2,000, it's quite expensive even by gaming standards. Even putting the price aside though, other than the ability to bend the screen, there was nothing all that notable about the monitor. Moreover, there was little need to ever bend the screen again after you found the perfect curvature, so you were paying a bunch of money for something that you'll probably just use once. Corsair has also expanded into other sectors like gaming furniture, SSDs, custom water cooling hardware, and even laptops. But with the big brand names already dominating most of these sectors like Samsung with SSDs, gaining market share has very much been an uphill battle. But not all of it is Corsair's fault. And that brings us to the third major factor behind Corsair's decline, which is the general decline across the entire gaming industry. The pandemic brought with it a huge amount of demand for gaming, because, well, everyone was stuck at home. This was especially true for the PC gaming industry. You can clearly see how search interest for how to build a PC exploded in late 2020 and early 2021 just as Corsair went public. But since then, interest has dropped over 50% back down to normal levels. So you have substantially increased competition across all of Corsair's core sectors, disappointing expansionary efforts, and a steep decline across the PC industry. Yeah, no wonder Corsair's fundamentals aren't looking that great. But what about consumer sentiment? Why are people so mad at Corsair? Reading through most of the one-star reviews on Trustpilot, it seems that a few concerns seem to come up over and over again. One of the most prevalent concerns is that Corsair software sucks. Many of these reviews acknowledge that the hardware itself is good quality, but the software side of things often makes things unusable. Most of the bad reviews center around Corsair's RGB software, iCUE. 7 out of 10 times I boot my PC, iCUE will not work, no matter what version I run. This has been an ongoing issue with iCUE for several years. I had always had problems with iCUE, such as it taking up my precious resources, not detecting my hardware, or killing USB ports that my hardware used, so I couldn't use Corsair products on them. Now, after a clean reinstall of Windows, I can't get it to open at all. Nothing in the taskbar. However, when launching, it takes up 20% of my CPU and some memory. There are hundreds of threads and reviews just like that, and at first glance, it might seem like a first world problem, because it is. But keep in mind, aesthetics is one of Corsair's biggest selling points. So when you're not actually able to control the aesthetics of computer parts and peripherals that you overpaid for, just for the aesthetics, it kind of defeats the entire purpose. I should also note that iCUE is not only causing RGB bugs, but connectivity bugs as well. This user, for example, is stuck on an infinite keyboard connect and disconnect loop. And this guy regularly loses keyboard and mouse connection for 2 to 5 seconds at a time. It's not just Corsair's iCUE software that's underwhelming though. Basically all Corsair software is underwhelming, and this especially becomes a problem when the software isn't just used to control your peripherals, but is used to run your computer itself, as is the case with Corsair pre-built computers. Do not buy pre-built computers from this company. They are known to provide a custom BIOS. Sounds like a great feature. It is not. It will not be supported more than a year from when the computer was sold. This means that you will never be able to upgrade many of the most important parts to make the computer function at a high level. The most frustrating part about all of this is that it can be fixed so easily. All Corsair needs to do is better support their software, but despite fans complaining since 2019, Corsair has yet to fix their software. It also seems like Corsair is starting to drop the ball with hardware as well. Most of their core products like keyboards, RAM, and computer cases are great, but a lot of their secondary products seem to be lacking quality. There are several complaints about how Corsair headsets crack really easily, and it's a similar story with their gaming chairs. But more than all of these software and hardware shortfalls, the aspect that seems to have really pushed consumers over the edge is Corsair's customer service. If you post on here or Reddit, they will comment as if they will look into your issue. Very quickly, you will discover the apathy, ignorance, and dismissiveness that so many have experienced. I'm writing hoping this may save some poor soul the agonizing experience it is to deal with Corsair and their customer service team. It's horrendous. If an agent responds at all, it will be a terse and unhelpful, uncaring response. Then they don't respond at all. Corsair support has become a black hole. Telephone messages, emails, online chat. You enter a message and it's gone, disappeared in an abyss of nothing. And I think this is what has really turned the community against Corsair. It's not that their software started off with the bugs or that some of their hardware was low quality, but the fact that Corsair doesn't seem to care about any of it despite years of complaints, and that right there is the true killer. Personally, it's quite disappointing to see this sort of behavior from Corsair. If you were one of the few people who saw my PC videos back in 2017, you know that I was a huge Corsair fan. They simply made great looking high quality products, but since then, it seems that Corsair has gotten high on their own brand name. It's almost as if they think that their RGB and design and marketing can overcome fundamental shortfalls like software bugs, low quality hardware, and terrible customer support. Corsair isn't alone in thinking this way. Another fan favorite that has recently fallen into this trap is Asus. They seem to think that their ROG branding allows them to implement anti-consumer policies and ship underwhelming products. The good news is that the market has a way of naturally correcting for such hubris and flushing out bad products over time. In the beginning, consumers beg for these brands to change their ways and go back to the roots of what made them a fan favorite to begin with. As these brands ignore these calls for more and more time though, the calls slowly fade away. But don't be mistaken, this isn't consumers backing down, it's usually consumers moving on. In fact, you could argue that that's why more competition has been so disastrous for Corsair in the first place. If Corsair's brand loyalty and moat were truly strong, people wouldn't jump ship as soon as someone else offered the same product. The reason that they did is because there was already a level of discomfort and distrust when it came to Corsair, so they were willing to switch to another brand in hopes of a better experience. And with Corsair's fundamentals already on a decline, it would be in their best interest to take consumer feedback seriously and start trying to pivot consumer sentiment as soon as possible, because if they don't, it won't be long until the brand is permanently tarnished, and that is what happened to Corsair. If you're interested in having companies like Corsair pay you for a change, check out our bond investing platform Silo in the description below. But until then, I'm Hari, and I'll see you guys on the next one.